It says in the upper left that the meeting is being recorded.
So weird. Okay, usually it goes recording has started. That's so weird. Okay, thank you. I don't know what that is. That's okay. Um, okay, so first of all, we ushered in a new month of Shvat, and we didn't really have a chance to talk about it much. Um, and in this month is the holiday everybody very much knows, the holiday of Tu B'Shvat, a mini holiday. So we're going to get to Tu B'Shvat in a little bit. We're going to hopefully get to cover that next week. But what I would like to just talk about is just for a few moments about the month and about the intentionality of the month. And what is it that we're supposed to be tapping into this month? So, first of all, you should just know that this month is all about the power of expansiveness, expansion, and breakthrough. Okay, so that's something very good to know. Like there are, and it's so funny because as I'm learning about Shvat and I'm thinking about like where we're holding with the weather right now, it feels so contradictory to like what's going on, and that's why I was like, no, we have to learn this stuff now because if we understand what's actually going on in the power of the world and the universe, we can tap into this energy, even though we feel a little bit like stuck because of the weather because it's so snowy and we feel so stuck. So that's just something just to think about. It's about this breakthrough. Specifically, the relationship with Shvat has to do not as much with the relationship with people, but specifically with things and the taste and the sense of this month is all about taste. So it's a lot of focus on our relationship with food, which is so interesting because this month has become, I know so many nutritionists, Jewish nutritionists who use this month to jumpstart all sorts of programs and all different things because there's so much power in this month in terms of our relationship with food because the sense is all about the taste. So relationship to food, relationship to money, relationship to things. It's gonna actually feed right very nicely into our chapter in Orchot Tzadikim, but that's just interesting. Um, This month is known to have positive potential energy. And we have the power in this month that we can be more mindful. And specifically, I do want to talk for a moment about food, the concept of breathing, blessing, eating. Okay. So oftentimes we just eat. We don't necessarily think we're hungry, we eat. In Judaism, we know that there's an extra layer that tells us before you eat, pause for a moment and say a blessing. Now, even with saying a blessing, sometimes you can do it by habit. You can do it by rote. It doesn't necessarily mean because Judaism says that you're saying a blessing that you're really pausing and breathing. But the concept of Shevat is really to be mindful about what's going into our mouth and listen to this word, capital M, to have mastery over these things, to have mastery over the things that we eat, to feel like we are in control, to feel like we're fueling ourselves with the proper food, to realize that we are eating for strength and for energy and for survival, that we're not living to eat, but that we're eating to live.
Yeah.
So I think that we'll start with that. Now I want to tell you the gematria, the numerical value of this letter of this month's name of Shevat is 314. It's the same numerical value as the word Shakai, Shin Daled Yod. I don't say it with the Daled because that's Hashem's proper name, but Shakai, Kel Shakai is one of the names of Hashem, Shakai. Where does this name sound most familiar to anybody? Where do we see this name the most? Shin Daled Yod, Hashem's name. Where is this written the most that you would see it?
On a mezuzah.
Good. Okay. The cover of the mezuzah, if you look on the tiny cover when it's rolled up in the scroll, you'll see a shakai. It's written on the outside of the scroll. Now, the fact that the word shakai and shvat have the same numerical value, we have to look at that word shakai, and it has, if you think about a different translation, it's she dai, that it is enough, meaning it's coming from an abundance mindset. Okay. So there's something about this month even that's telling us that we have to live it through. I am enough and I have enough. The reason, by the way, this is such a beautiful concept to think about, that every time that you walk into a door, there's a concept that every home in a every room in a home, if it's a doorway, ideally should have a mezuzah. That's like the best of the best, is if every doorway has a mezuzah in your home. And our rabbis teach us that there's a concept to tap the mezuzah and give it a kiss when you walk through it. And it's a level of mindfulness. But I think that this idea of understanding abundance, abundance, I am enough, I have enough, right? When you're walking through your door and every time you're coming from a place of enoughness and not scarcity, you're living your life in a different way. And this is a lot what this month is here to teach us about abundance, that place of I have enough, being grateful, right? Not coming from a place, even right now, you can hear two totally different narratives going on. You know, for those of you who saw my post, or I was privately in touch with you about this event, there was this big, today's Holocaust Memorial Day. And there was a huge event that was supposed to happen in DC today. And Slavy Wolf was supposed to be the speaker. She's a daughter of a Holocaust survivor. They were supposed to be bringing busloads of people in from New York, from Florida, from New Jersey. And they had 4 Holocaust survivors who were supposed to come. And it was supposed to be a full day with the museum. And then there was supposed to be a big concert tonight at the Kennedy Center with music that was composed by in Auschwitz, which I know, Nancy, you've heard some of that music, but it was supposed to be a big to do. So not only did Slubby get stuck, she's stuck in Florida and can't get in for this event. So the guy who's arranging this event reached out to me. He asked me if I could come in her stead and come and speak. I'm like, I'm not a daughter of a Holocaust survivor. I don't think you want me. No, we do. We want you, this and that. Back and forth. And should I this and that and that? You can't imagine. And can I get people? Can I not get people? What's coming? In the end, the Holocaust Museum itself is closed today. Mm-hmm. And he texted me this morning. Why am I saying all this? Because his attitude was so unbelievable. He was so inspiring to me. He just kept on saying, like, we're just going to roll with it. This is completely out of our control. You can't imagine the amount of money and time and effort that have been put into this event. And he was just so positive and coming from such a place of abundance. I was so moved. I said, like, my whole exposure to this whole thing was worth it just to see your response to this whole thing. Every time that we are in any sort of situation that feels constricting, we always have that choice. Are we choosing for Kel Shakai, Shaddai, that things are enough, or are we feeling constricted? The month of Shevat is here to remind us of abundance, okay? Okay, the power of, there's so many different things here. I'm just going to throw in a few other things. Back to food. You want to think about, are you controlling the food or is the food controlling you? When you eat, and this doesn't even have to do with eating, we said it's the relationship to all things, to money. If I was giving a class to men, which I'm not, it would be a lot about sexual drive specifically in the realm of men. You want to think, Stephen Covey said, you want to always have the beginning with the end in mind. Oh, there's a terrible echo. You want to always have the beginning with the end in mind. So this idea of food is a very powerful idea, right? Beginning with the end in mind. What is my end result over here? Breathing, blessing, eating, thinking about those 3 steps. Okay, in general, this month, if you've been learning with Shlomo long enough, you know, and there's a really great podcast coming out that's going to have so much more depth on the month of Shvat. Really, really exciting. But you know that this month, the month that Shlomo was born, is a full-blown wind element. It is the element of wind, and it very much represents the flexibility and the creativity. There's a lot of creative energy with this. The sign of the month is a deli, which is a water filler, like a bucket, a water filler. And the idea of this is that when you think of a bucket, when you think of that water bucket, you're thinking of the positive. Well, we're trying to think of it as positive, but this filling up this bucket with new fresh energy. And you become the vessel. What does that mean? So it's the power of the water carrier, but you become the vessel. You become the vessel to be the one that is receiving. So all of the blessing and all the goodness is coming in you. And then once you are the vessel, you have the ability to pour over those gifts into the world. So if you look at this beautiful book that Nancy got me, and I know some of you have bought, one of the journaling questions that she actually talks about is understanding, what are my gifts? How am I a vessel? She writes, what pours out of you naturally, effortlessly? These are often the gifts that we most take for granted. Here, this month, we want to take time to cherish them and recognize them. Sometimes we don't even recognize, we focus so much on from a place of scarcity that we're focusing on elements of us that we so crave, that we so want, that don't come naturally. But the things that are natural to us, have we even taken advantage of? Have we even really used them to be the vessel and to then pour from our vessel into others? I thought that that was such a powerful, just such a powerful reminder.
The wind is the problem.
Yeah, it totally is.
Okay. And then lastly, just going into, and then I want to hear if anybody has any thoughts or questions. But the last thing that I just want to say again is that the sense of this month is the sense of taste. So there's a lot to be said about this month. Actually, in Hebrew, we call it to be mitakein, which means like you can actually go about affixing for our relationship with the way that we have interacted with food. That is why specifically people become extraordinarily mindful this month to have a healthier relationship with food, because this month has the power to fix the months that maybe we were a little bit off our game. And we all know how we're off our game with food. But the bottom line is that when we think of food as a way to tap into energy, health, food is it. Oh my gosh, if I would start a class with the relationship to food, I would be here for 10 years, right? Like there's so much, and especially as women, we carry so much with the relationship to food. But this month, and I'm going to pause here to hear your thoughts, this month is the time that we just put our finger on the pulse. We pay attention. Where is my relationship with food? What does my relationship with food look like? Do I pay too much attention? Do I pay too little attention? Am I fueling my body with proper things? Do I recognize that I'm more sluggish? Does it have to do with food? Am I eating mindfully? Am I eating to fill myself up? Am I having portion control? Am I eating with shame? Am I eating with guilt? Am I eating with comparison? Am I eating with gratitude, right? Like all the questions that we can ask ourselves about food, this is the month that we can kind of really take charge and really try to own the power of food that God gives us as a gift. Okay, so I want to pause here just for a moment, and then I'll share the final thought of Shevat with you, and then we'll jump back into our regular learning. Any thoughts about this? It's such a loaded topic.
I have
Yes.
I have a question. So when you always say eat to live, not live to eat. So if someone never gets hungry, I never get hungry, but I eat because you're supposed to eat. So is that eating to live?
Yeah, that's eating some. Why you just naturally never get hungry?
I naturally never get hungry, which would be ideal. I mean, I love food, but I just never get hungry. But
Whoa.
Lisa, that is bizarre.
I'm
I've never met anybody like that in my life who naturally
Me neither.
never gets hungry. That's not a pill that you take, you're sure?
Yeah. Oh, positive. I should be this thin, but no. But yeah, I only eat because, you have to eat. So that's what I wanted to know.
Do you live to eat or
live to eat?
Meaning like if you're eating and you're fueling yourself and you're if you're eating because you need to live, then that is. But then there's also levels inside of that. Are you fueling yourself with the right things? Are you overeating just because it tastes good?
Right.
Obviously, you have to answer those kinds of questions. But yes, technically, you're at an advantage because you eating already. You're not hungry, so that's an advantage. But you have to be in a way. You have to be even more careful. Because
and
you're
mindful,
not hungry and now you're eating, how are you going about it? Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Devorah.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Lisa. Wow.
Yeah.
Amy.
What about those of us who think about food 24 hours a day.
Yeah, so there's a lot to be said. I mean, so welcome to women. I'm sure that you're not alone. There's a lot of people who think about that and and it's becomes obsessive and all the things. So
Well,
what's the question?
well, I know I'm not obsessive, but like I'll always think, okay, it's 7 in the morning. What am I making for dinner type thing? Or like when am I gonna, I think ahead about food to
Oh,
please,
so that's
not to
good.
please.
So I think the question that we often have to ask ourselves is just where thinking ahead, planning, so
Where
that you
is the
can
road?
be healthy, so that you can serve others, so that you can, there's nothing wrong with that. And as women, because we are, the nurturers and because we are the ones providing often, I'm just going to say often, it is on our head. Then you have to really question like, and what? Is it taking up too much time? Is there something that you could be
Right.
focusing on other words? You know what I'm saying? Otherwise,
Mhm.
you have to ask
Right.
yourself these questions. There's nothing wrong with
Okay.
thinking ahead and thinking about food.
Right. I
Devorah?
wish I had. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. So sorry.
No. I'm fine. I'm fine, dear. Go ahead.
I was switching the subject to non-food, so please
Oh,
finish.
so wait, so hold on. So what were you going to say, Amy? You wish you had what?
I wish I had a little bit of what that um the lady said before. I don't
Me,
know her. I'm sorry.
I'm
What's your
Lisa.
That's
name?
Lisa.
My
Lisa.
You wish
name's
you
Hi,
had
Lisa.
Lisa Fish.
Lisa.
Lisa.
Hi,
I'd be
Lisa. I'm
happy to
very
give it to you.
envious. I'm be
It's funny.
anyway.
Well, remember that the power of the month is the shakiness. It's the power of the abundance. So even when you're even the smallest shift, I always say like big shifts, like they're all talk. Like it's the tiny little micro changes and micro awareness that really makes the difference, Amy. So even if you're waking up in the morning and you're immediately thinking about, the next meals that we plan to have, even if you pause for a second and you come from a place of abundance and gratitude and you take a moment to think and to plan, with real intentionality, that already changes the whole thing. So that's already a step. Okay, Beth.
Um, I'm so glad that you finished that because it just gave me the biggest epiphany. I was
Oh,
going back to um, understanding what our gifts are and how we are a vessel and what pours out of us naturally. The topic before the food. And
mhm.
it really resonated with me because I feel like, I don't know if it's only in our household, but we're just sort of in this time of very much working on ourselves and what we need to improve and areas of opportunity and growth, and that feels like just take a moment and think about what we already what we our traits already are and what we're already blessed with and what our personal gifts already are. And then when you mentioned the power of abundance with the mezuzah, I was thinking about abundant and what we should be grateful for that we have. Like it's really cold here, but thank you, Hashem, it's sunny. And when you said it just now, it made me realize the power of abundance of our own personal traits that we already have. It's not just to be grateful for the things that we have, but to be grateful for what pours out of us naturally, as you said. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. That's so beautifully said. And thank you for pointing that out about, gratitude within the heart. So, you all know that I do a lot of coaching work, and a lot of times I meet with people and they feel very, very stuck in whatever area. I
Mhm.
meet with young, I meet with older, I meet with all types. And the first thing that we have to first identify is exactly what we're talking about, which is this month, which is like, what are you already a vessel? Like you're creating this whole picture and image, but like there's already stuff. You already have your wiring. You already have the traits that come naturally to you. Let's start from there. And for some people, I can't even tell you, it's like the shift in like, oh, like it's here, it's inside. It's not something that's outside of me. And that's exactly what this month is about. Um, it's about recognizing what that is already inside and filling that bucket with whatever is being the vessel. When you think about what a vessel is a thing that can hold, you know but it can only hold if you be a vessel. If the vessel has leaks, if the vessel doesn't have gratitude, if the vessel is just, then it's spilling all over the place. So in this month, we focus on creating the right vessel, creating the space for all the things to actually be planted and to settle in and to be rooted. This month is all about, we're going to get to it with Tu B'Shvat more, but the connection to trees, right? And it's all about like what's actually, how are we creating this vessel so that it can properly sprout? Yeah,
Thank you.
beautifully said.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the last thing, anyone, any other comments? Okay, the last thing I just want to say, and I think that this is such good for us, especially in the cold. Like this was such a powerful thing for me to think about this week because I don't know, it feels like things, I don't know, I feel like time literally freezes in this weather. Like why do I feel like I can't even think past like every day? I'm like, it feels frozen. I feel frozen. But the truth is that the power of the month of Shvat is actually about our rootedness and asking ourselves. And in the journal exercise that she says, she says, where do you feel that you are actually planted right now? Are you beside a stream or somewhere less nourishing? What do you need to prosper? And I think that it takes me out of this frozen mindset and really starts to think about like, where are those places that I've actually planted? Where are those places? We're going to learn that in Tu B'Shvat is actually when the sap is starting to rise inside of the tree. You've heard me say it 100 times if you've been learning. If you look outside, the trees are as bare can be. And yet something is happening. And the truth is that it's happening inside of us as well if we're paying attention. Meaning it's happening regardless. If you're paying attention, you can tap into it. The growth is dormant. The next month is going to be the month of joy. It's the month of Adar. But they rely heavily on each other. We're not just going to boom into this next month of Adar and be like flowing with just this extra joy. It's a process. It's a process. So this is very, very exciting time. And even though it does feel very cold and very dark, and use a few minutes to really to think about the roots, to think about becoming a vessel, to think about our goals, to think about where that's headed. Okay, so that's a little bit about Shvat. I did not want to just move on without talking about Shvat. And then, please God, next week we'll talk a little bit more about Tu B'Shvat. We'll be together in person. Actually thinking, I'll send you an email about that. Okay. So we are now, it's going to take us a while to get through this chapter on gaiva, on this haughtiness, on this gate of pride. And Tammy, if you're looking inside the book, then we are on page we're going to get to page 35 in a moment. I wanted to point out an example that we see from the Torah. We spoke about such interesting stuff in our last class. The example of a person from the Torah that is brought down in terms of having this misplaced haughtiness is actually the example of Korach. I'm trying to see. I thought, hold on one second. I must have underlined it in another book. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so we're on the bottom of page 31, Tammy.
Thank you.
And what it says over here is Hagaiva Mivia Lide Redifas Kavod, which means that pride leads you to the pursuit of honor for the purpose of lording it over other people. So now you're already seeing, no character trait lives in a bubble. They're all connected to one another. And what he's saying over here is that when one is misusing the trait of pride, it then leads to misuse of the trait of honor. Mm-hmm. The ethics of our fathers, Pirkei Avot, teaches us that there are three things that remove a person from this world. And there's what to be said, whether that means the physical world or the spiritual world, but they are kina, taiva, and kavod, which means jealousy, lust, and honor. It doesn't say haughtiness as one of them. But what you're seeing now is that haughtiness is actually very connected to honor. When one has jealousy, when one has desire, which are two different things, and when one has a deep need to seek out honor, those can remove a person from living in this world. They're just always on their eyes on something outside of them. There's something else. And now you're seeing that gaiva, that haughtiness, is very connected. So this example of this that he brings over here is the story that we learn about Korach, who has an entire parsha named after him. Who was Korach? Korach was actually Moshe and Aaron, who were brothers, Moshe and Aaron's cousin. And if you remember the story, when they were given the right to be leaders, to be the priests, Korach became extraordinarily, it stemmed from a place of jealousy. That's what the Torah will tell you. But now this Orchos Tzadikim is explaining that this was from a place of great pride. This was misplaced gaiva, because he thought to himself, why not me? I should have that spot. I should be in the limelight. And he creates such a tumult and such chaos, and he creates a whole following of other Jews to go anti-Moshe Rabbeinu and anti-Aaron, to be anti the greatest leaders, right? And to make a whole stink and a whole to-do. And it's all coming from a place of pride. And what ended up happening is that he gets tremendously, tremendously punished. And something very crazy in the history went down, where a special opening, and this is a whole Torah portion. If you did sip of spirituality with me, Torah, you remember the story, but a special a special mouth of the ground opened up, and it swallowed Korach and all of his followers into the ground alive. It's like one of the most wild stories written in the Torah, because in a world where somebody can live like that with such pride that they can't see that there's room for someone else to be at the top, Hashem said, I'm sorry, there is no space for this. And so the ground had to suck them in. And it was because of this, it came from a misplaced gaiva that this had to happen. And it's so sad, because when you think about what was really going on, is he was fighting for the kahuna. He was fighting for the priesthood. What was he fighting for? Essentially, he was fighting for something that was spiritual. But you know what he did? He took God out of the picture. If he put God into the picture, he would have recognized there's space for both of us. My brother, my cousin will do him. I'll do me. There's space for both of us. But he literally, his pride overtook him so great that even though he was striving to get to a place of more spirituality, he took God out of that picture. It's so sad. It was such a sad story. So without going deeper into that, that's actually the example that is brought down. Okay, so I'm going to skip a little bit now. I'm going to go now to page 35. And I want to speak about the opposite. Meaning we said that every midah, every character trait always has a spectrum. Like you can either be too much, or you could be too little, or it could be somewhere in between. So he addresses this over here. What happens when someone goes the complete opposite way? Meaning, he says, I want to have nothing to do with this midah of pride. I want nothing to do with it. I'm going to go completely to the opposite direction. Can anyone imagine what this would look like? Without having the text in front of you, what do you think this would look like? If we were discussing how pride shows up in the physical, with not being, being sensitive to someone's smell and the clothing and the status and all the things, how does the opposite go, Rachel?
I think that you might, or one might just have a feeling of entire lack of self-worth, from
Okay, and how does that actually physically show up? What
and
does
how
that
does
look
it
like?
physically show up? Maybe without not taking care of oneself in every physical way that would be considered acceptable in their society where they're living.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. Exactly. That is exactly what it is written. And I think that this is so important to recognize because, as you're learning these things, you have to recognize as we are learning these things, everything is about the balance. Okay. So what happens when one says, I just won't do anything at all? I won't care about the way that I look. I won't care about the way that I eat. I'll just completely remove myself from everything. I'm going to quote the book for a moment. He says, since pride is such an evil trait, I'll just separate myself from it to an extreme. This way, what is he going to do? I'm not going to eat meat. I'm not going to drink wine. I'm not going to take a wife. I'm not going to live in a comfortable home. I'm not going to wear becoming garments. I'm only going to wear sackcloth and stiff wool and garments that are torn. And he's going to use dirty, ugly utensils. And he's not going to wash his face, hands, and feet until he looks worse than other men. And he's doing all of this to remove himself from pride and lust to the farthest possible extreme.
Then he's not honoring his vessel.
So exactly, but listen to the following words. Listen to how that sentence ends. One who follows this course is called a sinner.
Mhm.
Not only is that frowned upon, but it's considered a sin. Why is this so important that the Orchos Tzaddikim points this out? To show that extremes are very, very dangerous. You're playing with fire, okay?
Mhm.
So for somebody to be so humble that they've completely lost a sense of self and can be so there, that's considered a sin. And he's going to bring a very specific example from the Torah. Gail, your hand was up. You're muted though. Forgot about that?
No, I forget. I mean, I'm thinking about what you've taught, what Lori's taught, that we need to recognize our strengths. Just remember that where they came from, that we shouldn't be so boastful that we are responsible for everything we are, that it comes from Hashem, and use the gifts that God gave us.
Yeah, which is exactly why I said it ties in so beautifully to this idea of being the vessel. Like it's just like a puzzle piece today. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So the example from the Torah, and maybe some of you were already thinking along this, right? Is anybody familiar with the concept of a Nazirite, a Nazir? Anyone know what a Nazir is?
Yes, I do.
You want to explain? What do you know about a Nazir?
They don't drink. They grow their hair. They're not allowed to shave or do anything like that. And that's the main thing I know. They don't drink and they don't shave.
And why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? What is a Nazir coming from? What is it stemming from?
I don't remember.
So it's a very interesting thing in the Torah. And the most famous Nazir was actually Shimshon, but it's traditionally, first of all, it's not really done today. When it was done for a period of about, let's say, 30 days. And the idea of it really was to become so removed from the physical that one can connect deeper to the spiritual. Meaning it was coming from a good place. It was coming from a place of, I'm seeking more connection to spirituality. So therefore, exactly as Lisa said, a Nazir, drink no wine, nothing having to do with grapes, wouldn't get married, wouldn't cut his hair, looked completely out of touch with the physical world, okay? All of these things. He would take this vow for 30 days. Do you know that after the 30 days were over, you would think, he completed this spiritual high, removing himself from all this physical pleasure. Let's celebrate. No. When this was a thing back in temple times, you can't be a Nazir now. When this was a thing, you had to bring a sin offering. You had to bring a special sacrifice showing that there was a sin involved in this. Why? Because that's not the ideal way to connect to spirituality. A Nazir, and there were a few Nazirim that we know, there were some, but when it was accomplished and when it was done, a sin offering had to be brought because God does not want us to be nut jobs. He does not want us to be crazy. He's given us certain gifts and he says, use them with care. Gail, exactly what you're saying. Now, a person who feels like they're not able to get that sense of spirituality back in the times of the temple, If you were not able to do that and you felt that you needed to pull yourself away, it's not, you know that there are other religions that go about life this way. This is not a Jewish concept. And that is why, when it was accomplished, a sin offering needed to be brought. Shlomo HaMelech actually warns us. We know that Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, was the wisest of all men. And he actually warns us, don't be overly righteous and don't be overly wise. What does he mean by that? This is what it means. You want to think you're overly righteous? It doesn't mean by pulling away all the gifts and pleasures. Now, this is so interesting because when I learned this concept, the first thing that popped into my head was the concept of what we call in Hebrew a chumrah. A chumrah means a stringency. So there are many, and this is where the balancing act gets it's a balancing act, okay? What is a chumrah? There actually is place in Judaism for stringencies, in case you haven't noticed. There's many places for people to be very stringent, and it's almost as if you are sending a little love letter to God. Pulling yourself away from all physicality is not sending a love letter to God. It's not a Jewish concept. So to dress in disgusting clothes and to, like the way that it describes it over here, to not take a wife, to not drink wine. No, we know. We know, right? One of the questions we're going to be asked after 120 years by Hashem, by the heavenly court, is, did you enjoy the pleasures of this world? I am jealous of Tammy Berman, the amount of this world of Hashem that she has seen, because after 120 in good health, Hashem is going to ask her, did you experience my world? Did you see the beauty of my world? Tammy and Jean will be able to say, we certainly tried, right? There's something there. There's something beautiful about that. There's something very holy about that. And what we have to understand is, what is the difference between pulling ourselves away from something physical versus a chumrah? What is a chumrah? A chumrah is a stringency. I'll give you a place. I'll give you an example. There's kosher, and then there's a chumrah. Maybe some of you know about the chumrah of Chalav Yisrael. Okay? Chalav Yisrael means that there are some people who will only have dairy when the milk was watched by a Jew from the time that cow was milked. Now, you might roll your eyes and you might say, that's ridiculous. But for the laws of kosher, Chalav Yisrael is actually considered sending a little love note to God. And if it brings one closer to God, and if it makes one feel more connected, like they're doing that mitzvah in a better way, that's considered acceptable. Notice the difference. Taking a mitzvah that already exists and elevating it by sending a love note up to God versus pulling oneself back and saying, I'm going to indulge in the opposite of pride. I'm going to pull myself so that I'm almost like a nothing. So I'm pointing out the idea of chumrah because you have to understand the difference. People have chumras of Shabbos, right? People have different chumras. They take on to light Shabbos candles early. They take on not to stop Shabbos until very, very late. Those are love notes to God. That's the way that they're indulging themselves into a stronger relationship with the Almighty. People have chumras in chesed. They give. People have chumras in tzedakah, right? They don't just give a tenth, they give a fifth. People have chumras in different things. You have to hear the difference. So I don't know if I'm giving it enough words. I almost feel like it's understandable just by me explaining this concept, but I just want to make sure. Do you understand the difference between pulling yourself away in an extreme from pride? Do you understand the difference than investing in something that is considered, this is a connection to spirituality, sending a love note to God? Yeah.
So on the same token, how do you know when you're going from elevating the mitzvah to going beyond, like, going to the extreme where, if we're talking extremes?
Yeah.
Like Aaron's sons, right? Didn't they get killed for doing that? For doing
yeah,
more?
well, it was a Avera that was done for the sake of a mitzvah. Exactly. Like it was almost like too extreme. They went above what Hashem wanted. So for me and you, Gail, there are guidelines. And the Torah tells us that you are not allowed to add a mitzvah and you are not allowed to take away a mitzvah. The guidelines are there for us. And the chumras are also there. They're written by sages. Those are written to us, given to us by the oral law. We're told. We don't make it. I don't make it up. I don't wake up one day and think like, this is a new nice way to feel like I'm sending a love note to God. I'm going to do this today, right? We are given guidelines. And if we decide that we want to take on a new guideline, the Torah will tell you, be careful. Maybe it already exists. Maybe something you want to do already exists, but be careful, because if you just add your own thing, the Torah tells us you're not allowed to add and you're not allowed to take away. It's actually written in the Torah.
Amen.
Everyone has to know if what they're doing is bringing them. This is like almost like a scary thing for me to say, but I want you to think about this. I have to think very carefully how I want to say this. When someone does do a chumrah, when someone decides they want to do something extra for God, they have to know if it's bringing them closer to God or if it's bringing them further away. Not with a regular mitzvah, because a mitzvah is there, and a mitzvah that's the written law. A mitzvah is a mitzvah. But once it becomes a stringency, if someone is doing imagine if it was you. Imagine if your child says, I'm going to start to do, because I love you so much, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And we see that the thing that they're doing for us, they're fetching about every second. They're becoming more grumpy. And it's becoming a strain on the relationship between me and them. What are they doing? That doesn't build a relationship. Thank you very much for the favor, but no thank you, right? Mm-hmm. God says the same thing with astringency for us. If it feels like you're really sending a love note and it's anchoring you and it's bringing you closer, be my guest. But when it's not, you have to question whether or not that's the right thing for you. Okay, I see a few hands. Whose first hand was up? Tammy.
I think when I hear you say it, I get it. But when I think of some examples in my head, I think it's a very fine line to know if, like what you just said, if it's bringing you closer or taking you further. So I think it's really hard for me to figure out which direction it's going.
Well, again, it's not with a mitzvah, it's with a chumrah. So you have to think what that is.
Well, I mean, I have friends who won't eat in their parents' houses. I mean, in Israel, because they don't buy meat at a certain place. Or they say that the dishes are okay, but they won't eat the food that they buy. They have to buy special food when
but
they
that's
come.
Not you, that's them. That's not you, that's them. That's that you can't, I have no idea. If they feel like that's their level and that's bringing them closer, that's in their turf.
Closer to who? To Hashem or the parents? It's a strain for
okay, so this topic is particularly very, very charged, and there's no black and white answer. Because with parents, it's very, very sensitive. Meaning if you're turning off parents along the way and you're not being sensitive, it's a whole nother topic. So I think like I have to table if you and I want to have a conversation about that privately, I'm happy to. But also be careful because it's them and it could be very, very sensitive. So it's a hard thing to say. It's very, very hard thing to say. I for sure can't just give a blanket statement on such a thing.
I have a dozen more, but I'm not going to go there. But my other thought is that I learned along the way that this is Hashem's world, and it's we're supposed to enjoy it. We're supposed to enjoy His wine. We're supposed to.
Right, that's what I said. Did you hear what I said about you traveling?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I did hear that, but I just mean in so many ways, we're supposed to enjoy that He made nice fabric that we can wear nice clothes. And
that's exactly what the Orchos Tzaddikim is saying over here. That's exactly right.
But that's why I'm saying, I don't know that it's a mitzvah to take in God's world and all the.
It is a mitzvah. And listen to this last line. Listen to this last line that he says in the middle. You can look at it on page 35. This is such a powerful line. I have it highlighted here. Our sages have stated further, is it not enough for you what the Torah forbade, that you have to forbid yourself other things? There's enough things we can't do. Like literally, there's enough things you can't do. But people like this exist. You know, this is not talking. This is a book for people to be living by. People like this exist, right? I'm just going to pull away myself. Nah, the Torah itself, that literally in the Gemara, it says that these words, our sages have said this, the Torah gives us enough things. So why? Do not be overly righteous and do not be overly wise, like Shlomo HaMelech said, like I quoted him before. Why should you destroy yourself? Okay, I see a few other hands, and then we'll continue. We'll continue for a few more minutes. Cheryl, is your hand raised?
Yeah, just I guess I always saw being kosher as forbidden and restrictive, and now I'm starting to see it as the mitzvah. And I'm just wondering, is that how kosher is considered, as the mitzvah, and when does it go into the Hamra? Like,
oh wow, okay, this is a huge topic. I just want to clarify what Cheryl's saying for those of you who are confused. First of all, the first line you said is fascinating to me, that you always thought of kosher as restrictive, and now you're looking at as a mitzvah. Can you just say one more line about that? I think that's such a powerful shift. Can you say one more line about that?
it's starting to feel internally for me like it is a hug or a love note to God to eat
And before it felt like it was just something like a can't. It felt more restrictive. Okay, that's beautiful. That's really, really interesting. So with kosher, so kosher is one of the most common mitzvot that you see the most chumras on. And the reason it gets so complicated is because technically, and you and I will have to have a conversation offline about this, but technically what the Torah tells you is lo sebashel gedi b'chelev imo. So, which means you can't cook a goat in the milk of his mother, meaning you separate milk and meat. They're not eaten together. What that actually ends up looking like, especially in today's world where we have such luxury to be able to have separate this, separate that, those are all extras that we have in order to help us keep the laws of kosher. But the bottom line is that we're never cooking any milk or meat together in the same thing, ever eating from the same thing. There also are then, after that, there are all of the kosher animals and the non-kosher animals. Those are the basic two guidelines of where it comes from. So many of the other things fall into stringencies. Tammy, what you're bringing up is even more complicated, especially in Israel, where it gets so political. Okay, so it's a totally separate topic. But I don't know if that, Cheryl, if that answers your question, meaning the bottom line is that we're not eating the wrong foods. There are certain animals and certain things that are considered not kosher according to the Torah. And then, is she still here? Did I just lose her? Oh, you're there. And then that the milk and the meat are always going to be separated and that they're never going to cook together. So that's really the bottom line. Now you can say, oh, that sounds so simple. When you start to break it down, it becomes not so simple.
I just wanted to say to Cheryl that yes, it's a mitzvah, but it's also the connection. I mean, when you talk about having a connection to God, to other people that think like you, I mean, I like the word connection, actually.
Thank you.
Well, mitzvah is connection, right? The word mitzvah in Hebrew comes from the root word of connection.
Oh,
so every mitzvah is meant to connect. How deeply in tune we are with mitzvot is how we are able to feel it either being restrictive or connective. And the goal in life is to look at mitzvot as connecting and not as restrictive, which is a life's mission, right? It's a life's mission.
Devorah,
Yeah.
I agree with that idea of connection, but in my own family, I see the following the mitzvah of some of, Abba's family, is actually creates a bit of a division. And it's hard. The thing and I think I've talked to you about before, I always think it's important for family to be together. But when it gets to, well, we can't do this and we can't eat that, it actually becomes divisive, as much as, you try and accommodate. So it's tricky. It's tricky.
Very tricky. And I think that's what Tammy was alluding to as well.
Yeah.
And I can't make any blanket statement over here. I think in the,
Right.
in life, especially when we're all on our own path and our own journey, and you see this sometimes, I think there's people on this on this call who can speak to this better than I can, but sometimes it happens with your own children and it's in your own home. And sometimes it happens with your parents and sometimes it's with a sibling. And we're all on different journeys. We're all on different paths. And
it's supposed to be shalom bayit. It's supposed to be
they're
peace in the
always
home.
shalom bayit, always peace, but peace also takes compromising on both sides.
Yes.
There's not one side
Right.
that needs to compromise more. And so looking at both values and seeing where they can somehow come together is the biggest struggle. But it's not, I need you to be, you to become a little bit more flexible. Like both sides also need to be a little bit more flexible.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's sometimes where it gets very, very tricky. But
Yeah.
I hear you loud and clear, Lauren. It can be
Yeah.
very hard.
And so I get in that microcosm, but I think like it actually is applying what we're learning to the greater, like the world, like extremes, the idea how our world is politics is very, but polarized. Um, and so, people being so, righteous on one side and I think I see it in the bigger picture is what I'm saying. I'm seeing it um in our world and it's not great, and but also
1,000%.
understanding it's hard to compromise. Like it's a challenge. So, you know,
Absolutely.
I-
Absolutely. So well said. Yes.
yeah.
Tammy.
I mean, I just have a thought of that for Lauren, and it's always, Lori always says it's not all or nothing. So even if you don't keep kosher, that you could just buy kosher meat. If you're making hamburgers, even cheeseburgers, at least, get into some kosherness or have two sets of dishes and it
No, but
won't.
what she's talking about, no, but she's talking about, okay. I don't know if that answered her
it's okay.
question.
It's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
I
It's
think it's
okay.
a separate topic. Um,
Yeah. Thanks,
anyways,
Tammy, but it's
he then goes on. I think what Lauren is saying is so important for us to recognize that we're talking about, the food and the drink and the clothing. But Lauren is pointing out, like, we're talking about like this issue is so much bigger than just the way that we dress and the foods that we eat. And pride is coming from such a deep source that's rooted within. And yes, when you pull that lens all the way back and you look at what's going on with the world, you can see capital P pride is a
Mhm.
huge issue that is creating a lot of this strife, a lot of this polarization, a lot of it is stemming from a place of misplaced pride. So I really appreciate that point a lot. He's going to get into it a little bit we'll probably get to it next week where we really shift away from the idea of the clothing and all of this. We're going to move much more into the character trait deep inside, the inclination that it's actually coming from. So again, he goes on into more, I think I made it pretty clear. He goes on into more descriptive ways of just really making it very, very clear that going through it's not the point is not to look disgusting and the point is not to eat disgusting and the point is not, that's not holy, that's wrong. And I think you can apply this concept to so many different things, when one feels that they're going to be holier than thou, as we see from this whole idea of the Nazir, it's an issue. Okay, I'm thinking that this is actually a very good stopping point because the next paragraph that we're going to start on page 37 is going to switch the tune a little bit. It's going to switch. So I'm just going to read you this last line from the paragraph before, and it really pretty much sums up all of the things that have been already said. And I'm just going to read to you over here. So a person's body should be clean and not sweaty. He should take care to wash his face, his hands, and his feet, and also his entire body at regular intervals, as we find in the case with Hillel Hazakin. When he took leave of his disciples and walked along with them, they asked him, "Where are you going?" So Hillel was known to be very clean. You hear many stories about Hillel on the bathhouse. He was always like going to the bathhouse. So they said to him, "Where are you going?" And he said, "I'm going to do a mitzvah." They said, "Which mitzvah are you going to do?" He answered, "I'm going to bathe in the bathhouse." We're not talking about a mikvah. He was going to take a bath. He was going to get himself clean. They asked, "Is that a mitzvah?" He said, "Yes." Now, if with respect to the statues of kings that are set up in theaters and circuses, their caretakers polish and wash them, for which he is not only fed, but also brought up among the royal dignitaries, I, who have been created in the image of God and the likeness of God, like it says, for in the image of God did he make man, how much more so should this apply to me? As it is written further, Hashem made all for his sake. Tammy, that's what you were referring to. All who are heedful of these things for the sake of the mitzvah and are not intent upon adoring and aggrandizing themselves through what they do may have the semblance of pride. Since their intent is the glory of God, this is such a great mitzvah. Imagine if every single time we took a shower, we were like, I'm on my way to go perform a mitzvah, right? Like that was his attitude. Like, I will keep myself clean because I need to be clean. Why am I different than a statue that needs to be polished? So I love that lesson. So like I said, we're going to switch. It's going to switch the tune a little bit in the next paragraph. And by the way, the next gate that we're going to walk into is going to be the gate of humility. It's going to go from pride to humility. Okay. So that's also very interesting to see the relationship between the two. Ladies, stay safe, stay warm, stay positive. Utilize this time inside to think a little bit, to plant some seeds, to think about how you want to get deeply rooted, to think about how you can be the vessel. May it be a blessed month of Shevat for all of us. I hope to see you in person next week, please God.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you for joining on Zoom.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Deborah.